Boi, come, Bashalan, in the peace, Atele, putting crown on, Byler, her husband, Boi Kailar, come bride. This is a beautiful Hebrew wedding song, as if the angels in heaven are calling for the bride who has been waiting for 6,000 years to stand up bravely and put on the crown of glory for the coming King of Heaven.
大家好，欢迎来到以诺谈天节目。今天我们继续谈雅各的故事，第12部分。雅各怒吼阵群王，百人对阵几十万。6日交战破敌胆，战后平安30载。上几回书我们讲到，两族在立百家的肚子里。我们还细谈了雅各与以扫名字的意义。雅各用红豆汤骗到了长子名分，雅各骗祝福，这两个骗都是双引号，指地上人的眼光。我们谈了雅各双婚，姐妹争风吃醋，雅各诡计聚钱财，拉班贪心失改心，拉结显遭神像祸，拉班穷追雅各家，以扫怒气灭雅各，天使拦阻震虎威，是渐强艰辛爱人，恶中加恶被灭绝。好，我们下面就谈雅各怒吼阵群王，百人对阵几十万。这段故事圣经中没有描述，所以我们看雅煞尔书中的描述。
Hello everyone, welcome to EnochTH Show. Today we continue the story of Jacob, part 12. Jacob's roar shook the kings, 100 against hundreds of thousands. The 6-day battle broke through the enemy's courage, and after the war, it was safe for 30 years. In the last few parts we talked about the two nations are in the belly of Rebekah. We also went into detail about the meaning of the names Jacob and Esau. Jacob deceived the birthright with red bean soup. Jacob cheated the blessing. These two cheats are double quotation marks, referring to the eyes of people on earth. We talked about Jacob's double marriage and sister's jealousy. Jacob's scheme and Laban's 10 times altered Jacob's wages. Rachel nearly died from the idol Laban chased after Jacob's family to kill them. Esau was so angry to come to kill Jacob, and the angels stopped this mighty tiger. Shechem raped his beloved, and was destroyed by his own evil. Well, let's talk about Jacob's roar shook the kings, 100 against hundreds of thousands. This story is not described in the Bible, so let's look at the description in the book of Jasher.
第37章，以雅各和他的儿子们从巴丹亚兰回来，住在迦南地。雅各住在迦南地的第9年，整105岁。雅各带着自己的儿子们从希伯伦又回到了示剑，因为雅各的儿子们在示剑获取了一块水草丰美之地，足以容纳他们的牛群、羊群。那时示剑城又已经重新整修，约有300人住在那里，有男人有女人。雅各住在从示剑的父亲哈摩手上买来的那块地上。那时雅各刚从巴丹亚兰到示剑，西缅和利未还没有屠城之前。40箭周围迦南地的王和亚摩利人的王听说雅各和他的儿子们又回到了示剑，并住在那里。他们就说，希伯来人雅各的儿子在屠灭示剑，赶出示剑剩余的人口后，怎么又回到示剑，并住在那里呢？他们现在回去，是否要再次把那城的民杀灭，或者赶走呢？6所有迦南人的王就聚集起来，要与雅各和他的儿子开战。基塔纳赫王亚述向他周围的王派出了信使，就是向加什王以伦、施罗王以户利、可萨王帕拉东、撒顿王苏西、比哈兰王拉班、 马斯纳马王沙比，对他们说：八，起来，和我一起去杀死希伯来人雅各和他的儿子及他们所有的。他们又占据了世界，杀死全城的居民，如同从前所做的那样。九那地所有的王都带着他们的军队到了塔纳赫，人数极其众多，如同海边的沙。史塔纳赫王亚述也带着他的军队扎营在城外。所有这些王的军队重新被划分为7个军，按着所属驻扎在7个营地，正对着雅各和他的儿子们。11，他们对雅各和他的儿子们宣战，说：带着你所有的人马过来吧，我们可以在平原开战，我们要为事件全城复仇，就是你从前所杀死的那些人，现在你又回到事件，住在那里，杀死全城的人，如同从前。12，雅各的儿子们听了迦南诸王的这话，就大大的愤怒。雅各的儿子们于是各带兵器，又带着102个仆人，就对着迦南诸王和亚摩利诸王列阵。13，雅各的儿子们和他们的仆人，在事件高地上对着迦南诸王和亚摩利诸王列阵，雅各也与他们在一起。14，雅各为他的儿子们向神祷告。雅各伸展双手，对耶和华神说：哦，神啊，你是全能的神，你是我们的父，你造就我们，我们是你手中的工。我祈求你，神啊，用你无比的慈爱，把我的儿子们从仇敌的手中解救出来。我们的仇敌今日要与我们交战，求你把我们从仇敌的手中拯救出来。你的手强而有力，从众多之中解救少数。15，求你使我的儿子们，也就是你的仆人们，有刚强的心，又充满力量，可以和仇敌征战，击败我们的仇敌，使我们的仇敌在我们面前尽都全然扑倒。也保守我的儿子们和他们的仆人，不致在迦南人手中丧生。16，如果你看为好，要带走我儿子们的性命和他们仆人们的性命。神啊，在你大能的手中，以无比的慈爱带他们离开，而不是死在亚摩利王的手中。17，雅各向耶和华神的祷告刚一止住，那地就有地震发生，日头也顿时变黑。迦南地的诸王和亚摩利诸王就胆寒惊恐，又惊慌失措。18，耶和华神听了雅各的祷告，就把恐惧不安放在迦南诸王和亚摩利诸王的心里，使他们对雅各的儿子们深感畏怯。19，耶和华神使他们听见从雅各儿子们的阵中传来的战车声和喧嚣的战马声，更有大军的声威，仿佛是随雅各儿子们一同而来。20，迦南诸王和亚摩利诸王对雅各的儿子们深感惊恐，他们都站在营中惊慌失措。只见雅各的儿子们带着仆人共112人朝他们冲了过来，喉咙里发出恐怖的怒吼，摄人心魄，杀声震天。21，迦南诸王和亚摩利诸王见雅各的儿子们冲杀过来，就越发的恐慌，手足无措，就想从阵前逃跑，退出战斗。22，但是他们没有逃跑，因为他们相互说道：如果我们退出战斗，就会给我们自己带来极大的耻辱，因为我们2次在希伯来人的眼前逃跑。23，雅各的儿子们冲到迦南诸王和亚摩利诸王的跟前，迦南诸王和亚摩利诸王都是勇武有力的战士，他们的军队也多如海沙。24，雅各的儿子们就向神呼救说：帮助我们，神啊，帮助我们，因为我们信靠你，求你和我们说话。这些未受割礼之人，今日过来与我们开战，不要让我们死在他们的手中。25，雅各的儿子们带着兵器，各自手拿盾牌和标枪，投入了战斗。26，雅各的儿子犹大带着10个仆人，冲在众兄弟的前面，直扑向亚摩利诸王和迦南诸王。27，塔纳赫王亚述也带着他的人朝犹大冲了过来。犹大见塔纳赫王亚述带着人朝他冲过来，犹大的勇气就被大大的激发，愤怒在胸中升起，英勇无畏地投入了战斗。 28塔纳赫王亚述和他的军队也朝犹大涌了过来。亚述是个勇士，骑着一匹健壮有力的战马，从头到脚都覆盖着铁和铜的铠甲。29亚述在战马上可以用双手在胸前和背后射箭，这是他的主要战绩，从来都是箭不虚发。30当亚述与犹大接战时，亚述向犹大不停地放箭，但是神束缚了亚述的手，他射出的箭非但没有伤着犹大，反倒射死射伤许多他自己的人。31虽然如此，亚述却继续冲向犹大，不停地向犹大发箭。此时亚述与犹大之间的距离只有30肘，犹大见亚述朝他放箭，就在狂怒中忽然爆发力量，朝亚述猛冲过去。32犹大从地上捡起一块大石头，重约60塔连得，朝亚述箭步冲过去，用石头痛击亚述，石头击中亚述的护盾，亚述刹那之间震惊得不知所措，从马上跌了下来。33护盾在亚述跌落地面时裂成了碎片，打在护盾上的石头又反弹至约15肘远的地方。亚述身后的第二队军兵看见亚述的护盾裂成了碎片，就大大的震惊。34与亚述同来的迦南诸王和亚摩利诸王，在远处见雅各的儿子犹大勇猛异常，又见犹大击打亚述，就对犹大感到极度的惶恐。35他们召集了亚述身边的军兵，只见亚述浑然不知所措。犹大就拔刀快步上前，杀了亚述身边的42个军兵，其他的人就丢下亚述，从犹大面前逃跑，无人能在犹大面前站立得住。那时亚述还倒在地上，无法站立起来。36亚述见自己的军兵都从自己身边逃走，就急忙爬了起来，带着惊恐站在犹大的对面。37亚述就只能与犹大单独对阵，亚述的护盾紧靠着犹大的护盾，两人贴身近战。那时亚述的人都远远地逃走了，因为他们极其害怕犹大。38亚述用手中的标枪刺向犹大的头，犹大迅速用手中的护盾抵挡住亚述的标枪，但是犹大的护盾在亚述的标枪刺中时也碎成了2片。39犹大见自己手中的护盾碎成2片，就迅即拔刀砍向亚述的脚踝，把他的脚都砍断了。亚述仆倒在地，标枪从他手中脱落。40犹大飞快地捡起亚述的标枪，用枪尖切断了亚述的头，扔在脚边。41当雅各的其他儿子们见犹大杀了塔纳赫王亚述，就全都冲进了迦南王和亚摩利王的队伍中，与他们展开战斗。42雅各的儿子们击杀迦南王和亚摩利王的军队，如同砍瓜切菜一般。那日共击杀了15000人，其余的都逃走了。43犹大那时仍站立在亚述的尸体边，正在剥去亚述的外套。44犹大正在剥去亚述的铁头盔和铜铠甲时，见有亚述的9个军长骑马冲过来与他交战。45犹大拾起一块石头砸过去，正好打中其中一人的头，把他的头盖骨都砸裂了。那人从马上坠落下来，就死了。46其他8人见犹大如此神勇无比，就惊慌失措地转身逃跑。犹大带着10个仆人追上去，把他们都杀了。47雅各的儿子们正在击杀迦南王和亚摩利王的军队，他们杀了其中的许多人。迦南诸王和亚摩利诸王那时大胆地和他们的军长站在一起，没有逃跑。他们对那些转身逃跑的军兵大声呼喊，试图阻止军兵们的逃跑，但是没有人听他们的话。迦南诸王和亚摩利诸王见军心已经崩溃，就惊恐万状，唯恐自己性命不保。48雅各的儿子们击杀完迦南王和亚摩利王的军兵，就都聚到犹大的跟前。犹大正好击杀了亚述的8个军长，再剥他们的外套。 49利未见迦实王以伦带着他的14个军长朝自己冲过来，但他没有在意。50以伦和他的军长们已经快要接近利未了，利未回头看见以伦正在朝自己冲过来，就迅疾地跳起来，和自己的12个仆人扑了上去，用刀把迦实王以伦杀了。
Book of Jasher, chapter 37. 1 And in the 105th year of the life of Jacob, that is the 9th year of Jacob's dwelling with his children in the land of Canaan, he came from Padan Aram. 2 And in those days Jacob journeyed with his children from Hebron, and they went and returned to the city of Shechem, they and all belonging to them, and they dwelt there, for the children of Jacob obtained good and fat pasture land for their cattle in the city of Shechem, the city of Shechem having then been rebuilt, and there were in it about 300 men and women. 3 And Jacob and his children and all belonging to him dwelt in the part of the field which Jacob had bought from Hamor the father of Shechem, when he came from Padan Aram before Simeon and Levi had smitten the city. 4 And all those kings of the Canaanites and Amorites that surrounded the city of Shechem heard that the sons of Jacob had again come to Shechem and dwelt there. 5 And they said, Shall the sons of Jacob the Hebrew again come to the city and dwell therein, after that they have smitten its inhabitants and driven them out? Shall they now return and also drive out those who are dwelling in the city, or slay them? 6 And all the kings of Canaan again assembled, and they came together to make war with Jacob and his sons. 7 And Jashub king of Tapnach sent also to all his neighboring kings, to Elon king of Gash, and to Ehori king of Shiloh, and to Parathon king of Chazar, and to Suzi king of Sarton, and to Laban king of Bethchorin, and to Shabur king of Othnama, saying, 8 Come up to me and assist me, and let us smite Jacob the Hebrew and his sons, and all belonging to him, for they are again come to Shechem to possess it and to slay its inhabitants as before. 9 And all these kings assembled together and came with all their camps, a people exceedingly plentiful like the sand upon the seashore, and they were all opposite to Tapnach. 10 And Jashub king of Tapnach went forth to them with all his army, and he encamped with them opposite to Tapnach without the city, and all these kings they divided into 7 divisions, being 7 camps against the sons of Jacob. 11 And they sent a declaration to Jacob and his son, saying, Come you all forth to us, that we may have an interview together in the plain, and revenge the cause of the men of Shechem whom you slew in their city, and you will now again return to the city of Shechem and dwell therein, and slay its inhabitants as before. 12 And the sons of Jacob heard this, and their anger was kindled exceedingly at the words of the kings of Canaan, and 10 of the sons of Jacob hastened and rose up, and each of them girt on his weapons of war, and there were 102 of their servants with them equipped in battle array. 13 And all these men, the sons of Jacob with their servants, went toward these kings, and Jacob their father was with them, and they all stood upon the heap of Shechem. 14 And Jacob prayed to the Lord for his sons, and he spread forth his hands to the Lord, and he said, O God, thou art an almighty God, thou art our Father, thou didst form us, and we are the works of thine hands. I pray thee deliver my sons through thy mercy from the hand of their enemies, who are this day coming to fight with them, and save them from their hand, for in thy hand is power and might, to save the few from the many. 15 And give unto my sons, thy servants, strength of heart and might to fight with their enemies, to subdue them, and make their enemies fall before them, and let not my sons and their servants die through the hands of the children of Canaan. 16 But if it seemeth good in thine eyes to take away the lives of my sons and their servants, take them in thy great mercy through the hands of thy ministers, that they may not perish this day by the hands of the kings of the Amorites. 17 And when Jacob ceased praying to the Lord, the earth shook from its place, and the sun darkened, and all these kings were terrified, and a great consternation seized them. 18 And the Lord hearkened to the prayer of Jacob, and the Lord impressed the hearts of all the kings and their hosts with the terror and awe of the sons of Jacob. 19 For the Lord caused them to hear the voice of chariots, and the voice of mighty horses from the sons of Jacob, and the voice of a great army accompanying them. 20 And these kings were seized with great terror at the sons of Jacob, and whilst they were standing in their quarters, behold, the sons of Jacob advanced upon them, with 112 men, with a great and tremendous shouting. 21 And when the kings saw the sons of Jacob advancing toward them, they were still more panic-struck, and they were inclined to retreat from before the sons of Jacob as at first, and not to fight with them. 22 But they did not retreat, saying, It would be a disgrace to us thus twice to retreat from before the Hebrews. 23 And the sons of Jacob came near and advanced against all these kings and their armies, and they saw, and behold, it was a very mighty people, numerous as the sand of the sea. 24 And the sons of Jacob called unto the Lord and said, Help us, O Lord, help us and answer us, for we trust in thee, and let us not die by the hands of these uncircumcised men, who this day have come against us. 25 And the sons of Jacob girt on their weapons of war, and they took in their hands each man his shield and his javelin, and they approached to battle. 26 And Judah, the son of Jacob, ran first before his brethren, and 10 of his servants with him, and he went toward these kings. 27 And Jashub, king of Tapnach, also came forth first with his army before Judah, and Judah saw Jashub and his army coming toward him, and Judah's wrath was kindled, and his anger burned within him, and he approached to battle, in which Judah ventured his life. 28 And Jashub and all his army were advancing toward Judah, and he was riding upon a very strong and powerful horse, and Jashub was a very valiant man, and covered with iron and brass from head to foot. 29 And whilst he was upon the horse, he shot arrows with both hands from before and behind, as was his manner in all his battles, and he never missed the place to which he aimed his arrows. 30 And when Jashub came to fight with Judah, and was darting many arrows against Judah, the Lord bound the hand of Jashub, and all the arrows that he shot rebounded upon his own men. 31 And notwithstanding this, Jashub kept advancing toward Judah, to challenge him with the arrows, but the distance between them was about 30 cubits, and when Judah saw Jashub darting forth his arrows against him, he ran to him with his wrath-excited might. 32 And Judah took up a large stone from the ground, and its weight was 60 shekels, and Judah ran toward Jashub, and with the stone struck him on his shield, that Jashub was stunned with the blow, and fell off from his horse to the ground. 33 And the shield burst asunder out of the hand of Jashub, and through the force of the blow sprang to the distance of about 15 cubits, and the shield fell before the second camp. 34 And the kings that came with Jashub saw at a distance the strength of Judah, the son of Jacob, and what he had done to Jashub, and they were terribly afraid of Judah. 35 And they assembled near Jashub's camp, seeing his confusion, and Judah drew his sword and smote 42 men of the camp of Jashub, and the whole of Jashub's camp fled before Judah, and no man stood against him, and they left Jashub and fled from him, and Jashub was still prostrate upon the ground. 36 And Jashub, seeing that all the men of his camp had fled from him, hastened and rose up with terror against Judah, and stood upon his legs opposite Judah. 37 And Jashub had a single combat with Judah, placing shield toward shield, and Jashub's men all fled, for they were greatly afraid of Judah. 38 And Jashub took his spear in his hand to strike Judah upon his head, but Judah had quickly placed his shield to his head against Jashub's spear, so that the shield of Judah received the blow from Jashub's spear, and the shield was split in two. 39 And when Judah saw that his shield was split, he hastily drew his sword and smote Jashub at his ankles, and cut off his feet, that Jashub fell upon the ground, and the spear fell from his hand. 40 And Judah hastily picked up Jashub's spear, with which he severed his head and cast it next to his feet. 41 And when the sons of Jacob saw what Judah had done to Jashub, they all ran into the ranks of the other kings, and the sons of Jacob fought with the army of Jashub, and the armies of all the kings that were there. 42 And the sons of Jacob caused 15,000 of their men to fall, and they smote them as if smiting at gourds, and the rest fled for their lives. 43 And Judah was still standing by the body of Jashub, and stripped Jashub of his coat of mail. 44 And Judah also took off the iron and brass that was about Jashub, and behold 9 men of the captains of Jashub came along to fight against Judah. 45 And Judah hastened and took up a stone from the ground, and with it smote one of them upon the head, and his skull was fractured, and the body also fell from the horse to the ground. 46 And the 8 captains that remained, seeing the strength of Judah, were greatly afraid, and they fled, and Judah with his 10 men pursued them, and they overtook them and slew them. 47 And the sons of Jacob were still smiting the armies of the kings, and they slew many of them, but those kings daringly kept their stand with their captains, and did not retreat from their places, and they exclaimed against those of their armies that fled from before the sons of Jacob, but none would listen to them, for they were afraid of their lives lest they should die. 48 And all the sons of Jacob, after having smitten the armies of the kings, returned and came before Judah, and Judah was still slaying the 8 captains of Jashub, and stripping off their garments. 49 And Levi saw Elon, king of Gash, advancing toward him, with his 14 captains to smite him, but Levi did not know it for certain. 50 And Elon with his captains approached nearer, and Levi looked back and saw that battle was given him in the rear, and Levi ran with 12 of his servants, and they went and slew Elon and his captains with the edge of the sword.
第38章，以示罗王以护利为要救家十王以伦，就朝着雅各冲了过去。雅各张弓搭箭，一箭把他射下马来，以护利当场就死了。当以护利战死时，其他4王就和他们的军长转身逃走，退出了战斗。他们说：“我们没有力量和希伯来人作战，他们已经杀我们3个王和他们的军长。希伯来人比我们更为彪悍勇猛。”雅各的儿子们见剩余的迦南王和亚摩利王在自己眼前转身逃跑，就奋起直追。雅各也从事见高地冲了下来，带着仆人紧追不舍。迦南王和亚摩利王见雅各和儿子们紧追不舍，就落荒而逃，一直逃到可萨城才止住脚步。雅各的儿子们追击他们的仇敌，直到可萨城门口，击杀了大约4000人。雅各用弓箭射杀了其余的迦南王和亚摩利王。雅各在可萨城门口射杀了可萨王帕拉东，又射杀了西顿王苏西、比哈兰王拉班和马斯纳马王沙比。雅各用弓箭一一射杀了他们。雅各的儿子们见迦南诸王和亚摩利诸王都已经战死，仍继续在城门口击杀他们残存的军兵，约有4000人扑倒。有雅各的3个仆人在城门口战死，犹大见自己的仆人战死，内心无比伤悲，对亚摩利人的激愤再次爆发。亚摩利王残存的军队兵败如山倒，他们推倒城门逃进城里，以致连围墙都被推倒了。残兵败将们在可萨城中藏匿了起来。可萨城是座大城，极为广大。雅各的儿子们乘势追击，也进了城。有4个大能的勇士，战斗技能极其丰富。他们手中各拿着刀剑和标枪，站在城门口的路上，面对着雅各的儿子们，阻止他们进城。拿弗他利冲上前去，顺势挥刀，一击之下杀了2人，就把他们的头割了下来。拿弗他利转身寻找剩下的2人，发现他们已经逃跑了，拿弗他利追上去，一并把他们也杀了。雅各的儿子们杀进可萨城后，才发现里面还有一道城墙，城墙上没有门。犹大攀上城墙，西缅和利未紧随其后，3人从城墙上面跳进城里。西缅和利未杀戮了所有逃进城的人，也杀了城中众人和他们妻儿。城里满是嚎哭，声震于天。但和拿弗他利也攀上城墙，朝着哭声传来的地方看去，他们为自己的兄弟担心，生怕有不测发生。他们听见城里众人的哀求说：“城里的财富你们尽可拿走，只求留下我们的性命。”犹大、 西缅和利未就止住了杀戮。他们又从城里攀上城墙，呼喊但和拿弗他利。那时但和拿弗他利已经站在城墙上面。他们又呼喊其他的兄弟，西缅和利未把城墙上的入口处只是给其他的兄弟，雅各的儿子们就进城大肆掳掠。18雅各的儿子们大大的掳掠了可萨城，获得了极多的牛羊和财物，就带着战利品回去了。19第二天，雅各的儿子们前往撒顿城，因为他们听说撒顿城的众民聚集起来，要和他们征战，为自己的王报仇。撒顿城墙高大，防御坚固，城墙外围更有壁垒环绕。20壁垒的柱子有50肘长，40肘宽，壁垒四周没有入口。雅各的儿子们寻找入口之处，但是没有找到。21其实壁垒上的入口之处开在城的背后，任何人想要进城都要绕城走到背后才能进城。22雅各的儿子们没有发现入口之处，就极为愤怒。撒顿城的众人见雅各的儿子们前来，也是大大的恐惧，因为他们已经听说了雅各儿子们的战力和他们对可萨城的所作所为。23撒顿城的众人紧闭城门，拒不出战。他们害怕雅各的儿子们会尾随他们进城。当他们见雅各的儿子们接近壁垒时，内心也是惊恐不安。24撒顿城的众人一见雅各的儿子们靠近壁垒，就飞快地把壁垒和城墙之间的吊桥升起。吊桥正对着雅各儿子们的来路，撒顿城中的人就把吊桥抽进城。25雅各的儿子们再次搜寻进城的入口，但依然没有发现。城中的居民则爬到城墙上观看，见雅各的儿子们正在寻找进城的入口。26城墙上的人大声地诅咒、羞辱雅各的儿子们。雅各的儿子们听到咒骂和羞辱的声音，就大为愤怒，怒火在心中燃起，就起了杀意。27雅各的儿子们就向城中的人挑战，他们跳上壁垒，从壁垒上跳进了城墙和壁垒之间的开阔地。28当他们站在城墙下时，才发现所有的城门都紧闭，城门是铁的。29雅各的儿子们试图劈开城门，但是城墙上的人阻止他们靠近，朝他们射箭和投扔石块。30城墙上面的守卫大约有4000人。雅各的儿子们见城墙上的守卫阻止他们接近城门，就奋力攀爬上城墙。犹大第一个从东边攀上了城墙。31加德和亚舍紧随其后，在西面的城墙角落里也攀爬上了城墙。西缅和利未在北边，但和吕便在南边都攀爬上了城墙。32城墙上的守卫一见雅各的儿子们爬上了城墙，就立即四散而逃，躲进城里去了。33以撒迦和拿弗他利那时还在城墙下面，他们击打城门，又放火烧，铁就融化了。雅各其余的儿子们带着自己的仆人冲进了城，他们大大的击杀撒顿城中的众人，无人能在他们面前站立得住。34大约有2000人从城中逃离，躲进了一座塔楼。犹大追击他们，打折了塔楼，塔楼倒下时，里面的人就都被压死了。35雅各的儿子们站在塔楼的废墟上面，见远处还有一座塔楼，又坚固又高大，塔顶高耸入云。于是就带着自己的仆人朝那里奔跑过去。他们发现塔楼里躲藏了大约300男人、女人和孩童。36雅各的儿子们击杀塔楼里的男人，他们就从那里逃跑了。37西缅和利未追击他们时，有12个勇士从藏身之处现身，面对利未和西缅。38这12个勇士与西缅和利未搏斗，西缅和利未不能胜过他们。这12个勇士打碎了西缅和利未的护盾，其中一人用刀砍向利未的头，利未赶紧用手去护头，刀砍在利未的手上，割出了一个口子。 39利未忍住疼痛，用力抓住刀，把刀从那人手中夺了过来，又奋力一刀劈向那大能的勇士，就把他的头砍断了。40其余的11人见他们之中有一人被利未击杀，就围攻利未，西缅和利未无法取胜，因为他们实在是大能的勇士。41西缅见无法取胜，就忽然发出巨大而响亮的尖锐口哨声。那时一个勇士正在打斗之中，忽然听到西缅的口哨声，就茫然不知所措。42犹大在远处一听到西缅的口哨示警，就和拿弗他利奔跑过来，见西缅和利未正在与11个勇士搏斗，无法取胜，因为他们的护盾碎了。43拿弗他利见西缅和利未的护盾碎了，就从随行的仆人中取来2面护盾，递给了西缅和利未。44西缅、利未和犹大与11个勇士搏斗，直至太阳落山，仍然无法取胜。45有人把这事告诉了雅各，雅各就为自己的儿子大为担心。他向耶和华神祷告后，就和自己的儿子拿弗他利加入了战斗。46雅各在附近用弓箭一连射杀了3名勇士，剩余的8人回头一看，见雅各和他其他的儿子们都赶了过来，形成包抄之势，就惊恐不安地退出战斗，想要逃走。47但和亚舍此时也已赶到，一连击杀了2人。犹大和他的兄弟从后面追过来，一举将剩余的人全都杀了。48雅各所有的儿子都又重新返回城内搜查，看是否有人躲藏了起来。他们发现有大约20个年轻人藏在废墟中，加德和亚舍就把他们全杀了。但和拿弗他利放火烧了第2座塔楼，杀光了周围的人。49雅各的儿子们杀光了撒顿城里所有的男子，但是妇女和孩童一个都没有受到伤害。50撒顿的男子都是大能的勇士，他们1人可以面对1000人，2人可以与10000人交战。51雅各的儿子们杀死了城里所有的男子，无人可以在他们面前站立得住，但是妇女孩童一个也没有伤害。52雅各的儿子们掳掠了撒顿，如同对可撒所行的那样，他们获得了大量的牛羊和财富，就回去了。
Book of Jasher, chapter 38. One Enihori king of Shiloh came up to assist Elon, and he approached Jacob, when Jacob drew his bout that was in his hand, and with an arrow struck Ehori, which caused his death. 2 And when Ehori king of Shiloh was dead, the 4 remaining kings fled from their station with the rest of the captains, and they endeavored to retreat, saying, We have no more strength with the Hebrews after their having killed the 3 kings and their captains who were more powerful than we are. 3 And when the sons of Jacob saw that the remaining kings had removed from their station, they pursued them, and Jacob also came from the heap of Shechem from the place where he was standing, and they went after the kings and they approached them with their servants. 4 And the kings and the captains with the rest of their armies, seeing that the sons of Jacob approached them, were afraid of their lives and fled till they reached the city of Chazar. 5 And the sons of Jacob pursued them to the gate of the city of Chazar, and they smote a great smiting amongst the kings and their armies, about 4,000 men, and whilst they were smiting the army of the kings, Jacob was occupied with his bow, confining himself to smiting the kings, and he slew them all. 6 And he slew Parathon king of Chazar at the gate of the city of Chazar, and he afterward smote Suzi king of Sarton, and Laban king of Bethchorin, and Shubur king of Machnema, and he slew them all with arrows, an arrow to each of them, and they died. 7 And the sons of Jacob, seeing that all the kings were dead and that they were broken up and retreating, continued to carry on the battle with the armies of the kings opposite the gate of Chazar, and they still smote about 400 of their men. 8 And 3 men of the servants of Jacob fell in that battle, and when Judah saw that 3 of his servants had died, it grieved him greatly, and his anger burned within him against the Amorites. 9 And all the men that remained of the armies of the kings were greatly afraid of their lives, and they ran and broke the gate of the walls of the city of Chazar, and they all entered the city for safety. 10 And they concealed themselves in the midst of the city of Chazar, for the city of Chazar was very large and extensive, and when all these armies had entered the city, the sons of Jacob ran after them to the city. 11 And 4 mighty men, experienced in battle, went forth from the city and stood against the entrance of the city, with drawn swords and spears in their hands, and they placed themselves opposite the sons of Jacob, and would not suffer them to enter the city. 12 And Naphtali ran and came between them, and with his sword smote 2 of them, and cut off their heads at one stroke. 13 And he turned to the other 2, and behold they had fled, and he pursued them, overtook them, smote them, and slew them. 14 And the sons of Jacob came to the city and saw, and behold there was another wall to the city, and they sought for the gate of the wall and could not find it, and Judah sprang upon the top of the wall, and Simeon and Levi followed him, and they all 3 descended from the wall into the city. 15 And Simeon and Levi slew all the men who ran for safety into the city, and also the inhabitants of the city with their wives and little ones, they slew with the edge of the sword, and the cries of the city ascended up to heaven. 16 And Dan and Naphtali sprang upon the wall to see what caused the noise of lamentation, for the sons of Jacob felt anxious about their brothers, and they heard the inhabitants of the city speaking with weeping and supplications, saying, Take all that we possess in the city and go away, only do not put us to death. 17 And when Judah, Simeon, and Levi had ceased smiting the inhabitants of the city, they ascended the wall and called to Dan and Naphtali, who were upon the wall, and to the rest of their brothers, and Simeon and Levi informed them of the entrance into the city, and all the sons of Jacob came to fetch the spoil. 18 And the sons of Jacob took the spoil of the city of Chazar, the flocks and herds, and the property, and they took all that could be captured, and went away that day from the city. 19 And on the next day the sons of Jacob went to Sarton, for they heard that the men of Sarton who had remained in the city were assembling to fight with them for having slain their king, and Sarton was a very high and fortified city, and it had a deep rampart surrounding the city. 20 And the pillar of the rampart was about 50 cubits, and its breadth 40 cubits, and there was no place for a man to enter the city on account of the rampart, and the sons of Jacob saw the rampart of the city, and they sought an entrance in it but could not find it. 21 For the entrance to the city was at the rear, and every man that wished to come into the city came by that road and went around the whole city, and he afterwards entered the city. 22 When the sons of Jacob, seeing they could not find the way into the city, their anger was kindled greatly, and the inhabitants of the city, seeing that the sons of Jacob were coming to them, were greatly afraid of them, for they had heard of their strength and what they had done to Chazar. 23 And the inhabitants of the city of Sarton could not go out toward the sons of Jacob after having assembled in the city to fight against them, lest they might thereby get into the city, but when they saw that they were coming toward them, they were greatly afraid of them, for they had heard of their strength and what they had done to Chazar. 24 So the inhabitants of Sarton speedily took away the bridge of the road of the city from its place, before the sons of Jacob came, and they brought it into the city. 25 And the sons of Jacob came and sought the way into the city, and could not find it, and the inhabitants of the city went up to the top of the wall, and saw, and behold the sons of Jacob were seeking an entrance into the city. 26 And the inhabitants of the city reproached the sons of Jacob from the top of the wall, and they cursed them, and the sons of Jacob heard the reproaches, and they were greatly incensed, and their anger burned within them. 27 And the sons of Jacob were provoked at them, and they all rose and sprang over the rampart with the force of their strength, and through their might past the 40 cubits breadth of the rampart. 28 And when they had passed the rampart, they stood under the wall of the city, and they found all the gates of the city enclosed with iron doors. 29 And the sons of Jacob came near to break open the doors of the gates of the city, and the inhabitants did not let them, for from the top of the wall they were casting stones and arrows upon them. 30 And the number of the people that were upon the wall was about 400 men, and when the sons of Jacob saw that the men of the city would not let them open the gates of the city, they sprang and ascended the top of the wall, and Judah went up first to the east part of the city. 31 And Gad and Asher went up after him to the west corner of the city, and Simeon and Levi to the north, and Dan and Reuben to the south. 32 And the men who were on the top of the wall, the inhabitants of the city, seeing that the sons of Jacob were coming up to them, they all fled from the wall, descended into the city, and concealed themselves in the midst of the city. 33 And Issachar and Naphtali that remained under the wall approached and broke the gates of the city, and kindled a fire at the gates of the city, that the iron melted. And all the sons of Jacob came into the city, they and all their men, and they fought with the inhabitants of the city of Sarton, and smote them with the edge of the sword, and no man stood up before them. 34 And about 200 men fled from the city, and they all went and hid themselves in a certain tower in the city. And Judah pursued them to the tower, and he broke down the tower, which fell upon the men, and they all died. 35 And the sons of Jacob went up the road of the roof of that tower, and they saw, and behold there was another strong and high tower at a distance in the city, and the top of it reached to heaven. And the sons of Jacob hastened and descended, and went with all their men to that tower, and found it filled with about 300 men, women, and little ones. 36 And the sons of Jacob smote a great smiting amongst those men in the tower, and they ran away and fled from them. 37 And Simeon and Levi pursued them, when 12 mighty and valiant men came out to them from the place where they had concealed themselves. 38 And those 12 men maintained a strong battle against Simeon and Levi, and Simeon and Levi could not prevail over them, and those valiant men broke the shields of Simeon and Levi, and one of them struck at Levi's head with his sword, when Levi hastily placed his hand to his head, for he was afraid of the sword, and the sword struck Levi's hand, and it wanted but little to the hand of Levi being cut off. 39 And Levi seized the sword of the valiant man in his hand, and took it forcibly from the man, and with it he struck at the head of the powerful man, and he severed his head. 40 And 11 men approached to fight with Levi, for they saw that one of them was killed, and the sons of Jacob fought, but the sons of Jacob could not prevail over them, for those men were very powerful. 41 And the sons of Jacob seeing that they could not prevail over them, Simeon gave a loud and tremendous shriek, and the 11 powerful men were stunned at the voice of Simeon's shrieking. 42 And Judah at a distance knew the voice of Simeon shouting, and Naphtali and Judah ran with their shields to Simeon and Levi, and found them fighting with those powerful men, unable to prevail over them as their shields were broken. 43 And Naphtali saw that the shields of Simeon and Levi were broken, and he took 2 shields from his servants and brought them to Simeon and Levi. 44 And Simeon, Levi and Judah on that day fought all 3 against the 11 mighty men until the time of sunset, but they could not prevail over them. 45 And this was told unto Jacob, and he was sorely grieved, and he prayed unto the Lord, and he and Naphtali his son went against these mighty men. 46 And Jacob approached and drew his bow, and came nigh unto the mighty men, and slew 3 of their men with the bow, and the remaining 8 turned back, and behold, the war waged against them in the front and rear, and they were greatly afraid of their lives, and could not stand before the sons of Jacob, and they fled from before them. 47 And in their flight they met Dan and Asher coming toward them, and they suddenly fell upon them, and fought with them, and slew 2 of them, and Judah and his brothers pursued them, and smote the remainder of them, and slew them. 48 And all the sons of Jacob returned and walked about the city, searching if they could find any men, and they found about 20 young men in a cave in the city, and Gad and Asher smote them all, and Dan and Naphtali lighted upon the rest of the men who had fled and escaped from the second tower, and they smote them all. 49 And the sons of Jacob smote all the inhabitants of the city of Sarton, but the women and little ones they left in the city and did not slay them. 50 And all the inhabitants of the city of Sarton were powerful men, one of them would pursue 1,000, and 2 of them would not flee from 10,000 of the rest of men. 51 And the sons of Jacob slew all the inhabitants of the city of Sarton with the edge of the sword, that no man stood up against them, and they left the women in the city. 52 When the sons of Jacob took all the spoil of the city, and captured what they desired, and they took flocks and herds and property from the city, and the sons of Jacob did unto Sarton and its inhabitants as they had done to Chazar and its inhabitants, and they turned and went away.